going guys, and welcome back to another video. In this episode, I decided to set myself a target species, and the fish I chose for that is the black spot tuskfish, or more commonly known as blueies or tuskies. Now these guys are pretty common for the Queensland coast, especially in the smaller sizes up to around 5 kilos or so, but they do grow a hell of a lot larger than that, with the record coming in at over 16 kilos. But the benchmark trophy fish that most spearos aim for is 10 kilos, so that was where I decided to set my goal. I started off my search in a spot I've got some great fish off in previous years. I did see a few small tuskfish, but on this particular day the bigger guys didn't seem to be around. The next spot I tried was one I've never been to before, and it had stacks of life on it. However, there were no real prized fish here. Despite this, the visibility was some of the best I dove in search of the tuskies, and there was a bunch of cod stacked up in this rock, so it made for a pretty nice dive. Moving on from there, we managed to find this small isolated rock. It seemed to be a really healthy little spot with a few cod and some coral trout hanging around, but with no big tuskies to be seen, we decided not to take anything and we went home empty-handed. After a few trips checking some promising areas with only a few small tuskies seen, I decided to break it up a bit and head a bit further out to a wreck that I'd been to in the past in hopes of some nicer viz. When we got there, the water looked pretty clear and the sounder was loaded, so we suited up and jumped in, and although the first 10 meters or so was quite nice, there was a layer of cold, dirty water on the bottom, and other than the huge schools of bait around, there wasn't really much to see here. Even when the fish aren't around, I usually really enjoy diving wrecks like this, but on this occasion, diving through this giant cloud of bait into a less than desirable viz, it gave quite an eerie atmosphere, so it wasn't long before we decided to head elsewhere. I decided we'd have a go on one of the channel markers as there wasn't much else close by. The conditions here were much the same, with a stack of bait hanging around and only a few meters visibility, although we were given a pretty good reason to move on this time. I took this as a sign to give up on my search for clear water and focus back onto the tuskfish. I tried another area that was new to me and it had all the right features for big tuskies. I didn't see any big guys on this particular day, so I took a coral trout for a feed, but I knew I had to come back here. That shot was artistic, mate. Artistic. Fast forward a few days and I was itching to get back out to that spot. And with a break in the weather, lining up with the small tides, we hitched the boat on and headed straight there. The viz looked a little dirty, but it was clear enough, so Lucas and I suited up, Mark was put on birdie duty, and we jumped straight in. As we motored up on the spot for our first drift, I jokingly told the lads that there was a 10+ kilo tusky waiting for me on the bottom. but I didn't expect to run into this guy on my very first dive. As you can probably tell, these guys fight super hard and this fish was really stuck. The current was too strong for me to breathe up for a recovery dive, so we chucked a float on the gun, jumped back in the boat, and we drove right up past the float in order to drift back and hopefully make a dive right on top of the fish. I took my dive a touch late and landed behind the fish, but I was able to pull myself up the shooting line and dig him out of the hole. After securing that fish, I offered to boatie for Mark, but he decided he wasn't super keen on the low vis. So Lucas and I had a few more dives just exploring the area and trying to suss out the fish on this spot for future dives, and it turned out to be one of the coolest little coastal areas I've found so far.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that. Was it sitting right up off the bottom? Swimming around? Yeah.
Once we got back from that trip, I threw that guy straight on the scales and he came in at 10.2 kilos. So as far as my goal was concerned, that was mission complete. But about a fortnight later, we encountered some really good viz lining up with the small tides once again. So I took the opportunity to go to an area that's usually really dirty but holds some great fish, and it paid off big time. When we pulled up, the sounder was lit up and the water looked super clear. So we suited up and wasted no time jumping in. And although there were fish everywhere on this spot, we really struggled to find anything of substantial size. We stuck it out for a good hour or so, searching as much of the area as we could while the viz was good enough to allow it. We didn't find many good fish for a while, but I did find a few nice crayfish.
There's another cray about the same size. Oh, he's heavy too.
With the tide about to turn, and so far only crayfish in the esky, I decided to pull the anchor and have a sound around for any other close by structure. I found another bit of rock, and with the sun starting to drop, we hopped in for our last couple of dives, and what we saw was pretty special. My first dive here was a bit sloppy, and about halfway down I stopped to look up, and I saw 3 or 4 really nice sized tuskies, but I think my body language was just off and I had upset these fish, so I bailed on this dive and I tried again. My next dive was much more composed, but after already upsetting these fish a bit, they had gotten a little flighty, so I headed to the bottom and I laid as flat as I could and just scratched the rock, and it wasn't long before this guy came rolling in. You can see he was a bit edgy here and he flinched as I moved my gun, but I held my position and made sure not to chase after him, and he slowly came back around and presented a nice broadside shot. After missing that fish, I didn't really expect to see them again, but I decided to have another dive just a little deeper on this spot as they looked like they had moved off a little. And to my surprise, after a quick sit on the bottom with a bit of scratching, they came straight back in. They were obviously very flighty by this stage, and one of these fish actually disappeared, but the curiosity got the better of this one and I managed to land the shot. I had one last dive for the day after that fish, just to seal off a good day's diving, and to my surprise another big tusky came in and had a look at me, but I decided not to take him and we called it a day.